Hey everybody, Jim here with another video for you. This is Shocktober 2025, episode 19. But before I begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, but most importantly, please leave comments below. Let me know how you feel about this series. Let me know how you feel about the movies I'm about ready to mention. Now, in yesterday's video, we did anthology horror, and one of the movies that I highlighted was Cat's Eye. Based on a couple of Stephen King stories starring Drew Barrymore. And I said that it really wasn't a horror movie, but you can consider it a gateway horror film for younger audience. And that kind of inspired the idea for today's video. So today, we are going to be talking about gateway horror films. Now, the first horror film I ever saw was Night of the Living Dead. I covered that in the very first episode of this series. But before that, I saw Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is a classic film. I highly recommend. It's still great, but that was really my gateway into the horror genre, that and Young Frankenstein. So bearing that in mind, I thought for another generation, their gateway horror films were Poltergeist, which came out in 1982. This movie's rated PG and it's still scary. That goddamn clown freaked me out, still does. Starring Craig T. Nelson and Jo Beth Williams and the late, great Heather O'Rourke. Yeah, it's a great movie. Tobe Hooper directed this, but for a whole generation of kids, this was their first horror film. Or Joe Dante's Gremlins, which really isn't a horror film, but believe me, I worked at the theater when this came out in 1984, and there was a whole damn generation of children that were just traumatized by Gremlins. Not necessarily all of it because of the scares, okay, like the microwave scene or any of the shit where the little nasty lizard gremlins get kind of gnarly. Stripe coming after him with a friggin' chainsaw at one point. But that, between that and the Santa Claus subplot, that's what really did it for most kids. But again, for a whole generation of kids in the 80s, this was their gateway film. So, bearing that in mind, I decided to include a couple of other ones that I think would be suitable, not necessarily for small children, but obviously for kids that are, 12, 13, 14 years old. None of these movies coming up are gory. One of them, only one of them, I'm sorry, two of them are rated R, but simply for language. And seriously, if the ratings board could do them over, both of them would probably be PG-13 today. So let's begin. The first one is also from the 80s, and it's The Monster Squad. This is a really, really fun movie. This one is directed by Fred Decker. And again, for a whole generation, this was their gateway horror film. This came out in 87. And the gist on this is that a group of kids come across real live versions. Now, they're not actually called Dracula and the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and they do say the Wolfman, but they don't call him, Larry Talbot and stuff. But it's obviously supposed to be the Universal monsters, but because they didn't want to get sued, they kind of like don't refer to them by those names. Doesn't matter. You know who the characters are. And this movie's a lot of fun. There's even a documentary that came out years later by one of the stars of the movie, one of the kid stars, and it's called Werewolves Got Nards, because that is one of the classic scenes from the movie. The kid is getting attacked by the werewolf. He turns around, he kicks him in the balls, and then the werewolf kind of doubles over, and he does. He looks at his friends and he says, "Hey, werewolves got nards." It just became kind of a battle cry for kids of that age in the 80s. But yeah, Monster Squad, it's a lot of fun. Next. Now this one is relatively new. It came out a couple of years ago. And it's The Boogeyman, based on the short story by Stephen King. And when I say short story, I mean it. The original source material that this movie is based on is 4 pages long. Might be 6 pages long. It's one or the other, okay? There is a 10-minute sequence at the beginning of this movie with David Demalchian. That is the story. And then everything from that point on is made up for this movie, okay? And it's not a great movie, but it's decent. For a PG-13 horror movie, it's pretty decent. And there's nothing in this movie that is going to traumatize your kids. There are some jump scares, lots of them, okay? But this isn't as scary as, say, The Ring or, something along those lines. And overall, for what it is, it's an effective little movie. I do enjoy this movie. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's going to be a classic, but for what it is and being like a gateway horror, which is what the whole purpose of this video is, I think The Boogeyman certainly applies. So that's the the second movie I'm going to be recommending on this little video. Next, now this one's pretty obscure. Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. This one is directed by Anthony Hickox, who just passed away recently. This movie's got a great cast, okay? We're talking David Carradine, Bruce Campbell, Emmett Walsh, Deborah Foreman, John Ireland. It's just great cast in this movie. And again, this movie is more of a comedy than a vampire movie. There are vampires in it, but the gist on this is that in this little town in the West, okay, it's been bought out by a group of vampires who are trying to go legitimate. They're trying to go straight. Kind of like True Blood. This movie was True Blood before True Blood, but without all the gothic soap opera sex, okay? Really, really silly movie, okay? But it's fun. And Emmett Walsh is awesome in this movie, he passed away recently as well, but he was always one of my favorite character actors, and he's phenomenal in this. Not to mention, there's two of my favorite people in the whole world right there, Bruce Campbell and Deborah Foreman, who unfortunately, she kind of disappeared, but I've always had like a crush on her. So check out the Sundown Vampire in Retreat. It's from Vestron. You can get it pretty cheap. And again, this isn't a great movie, but it's fun. And there's nothing in this movie that your kids are going to freak out about. The reason why this one is rated R is because there are a couple of F-bombs and there's one moment of violence. And it's not scary. It's kind of funny in a way. So the next recommendation is Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. But this last one, speaking of my friend Bruce Campbell, I'm going with the third Evil Dead movie, Army of Darkness. This is my Scream Factory 4K Blu-ray combo. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this in its full glory. It's the artwork on this is just gorgeous. It really is. As I said, this is the third chapter in the Evil Dead series. And again, there is not a moment in this movie that is scary. Well, I guess there could be a couple of moments for small children, but for a kid 13, there is nothing in this movie that is scary. There's really very little blood. There's one scene with a geyser of blood, and that's literally it. And the rest of it is played for laughs. It really is. This movie is hilariously stupid, but also extremely entertaining. And again, this is one of those movies I was talking about that if it could go up ahead of the ratings board again, I guarantee this movie would be rated PG-13 now. Because there is one F-bomb, and that's it. That's it. Seriously, this movie should be PG-13. But like I said, I showed this to my grandson when he was 11. And there wasn't a moment in this movie that gave him nightmares, freaked him out, or whatever. He thought it was a cartoon. And that's basically what this movie is. It's a extremely entertaining cartoon. And that's how we're going to wrap up today's edition of Shocktober 2025. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. But most importantly, please leave those comments below. I really look forward to hearing from you. One last thing I do want to mention. In yesterday's video, I said Tales from the Dark Side was directed by George Harrison, and I meant to say John Harrison. My good friends over in the UK, Stuart and Roy, Stuart from Stuart, George's Home Movies, and Roy from Blue Roy Movies, both had to give me shit about it on social media, so of course I had to correct it here and give them both a shout out for doing so. As soon as I said it, I realized I made a mistake, but quite honestly, I was in a time crunch and I didn't feel like doing it over. So kudos to both of you gentlemen. There's your little shout out to both of you, you British bastards. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, but most importantly, leave those comments below. We'll catch you on the next one.